We are here in Paris in the SIPM Congress, and we are very happy to introduce Giora Hon, Yael Kedar, and Elena Baltuta that were really kind to give us an interview about what they are doing. So the first question I'd like to ask you is about this project on Roger Bacon. If you could explain us how it appeared, what are your goals, what is your methodology, all that.
Sure. So basically, you should tell us. We should tell you the application that we wrote for them. Okay, so it started with the goals, right?
Yes.
Right. Would you like to?
Yes. Yay.
Okay. So, how did it start? I think it started out of a conversation that Nicola and I had at some point, and we were really surprised to find that Bacon is giving, but at least he's declaring that he wants to use math as a method of proof in natural philosophy, but not only natural philosophy, in metaphysics too, and in theology. So we wanted to look a bit into that. Mm-hmm. And then it had developed into a full project. It was like in 2 weeks that we wrote the proposal. And the idea was to examine how he thinks math should be applied in studying other areas, other areas of knowledge. And because Bacon wrote that math is easily known to us, we are, the image that math has is like a very difficult subject, only for very talented people. But Bacon didn't think that was the case. He thought that math is natural to us. So he thought that by applying methods taken from mathematics to other domains, we could be more efficient in achieving goals of knowing more, goals of studying. And so we called it Bacon's mathematical epistemology, because he thought the method of mathematics as a method of inquiry. That was his, as we understand it, that was his stress, and he was unique at that, at least in his time. So this was what we wanted to explore.
So an important element of mathematics is the concept of quantity. And the question is, how did Bacon treat the concept of quantity, and to actually come up with some new ideas regarding quantity in order to manipulate mathematics vis-a-vis metaphysics, and to have the authority of mathematics to decide the issues in metaphysics, in religion. So the subject is focused on mathematics, but in fact it's widespread with respect to other elements, aspects of Bacon's philosophy.
So I will just add that Bacon was not such a great mathematician. The interesting idea of his that we're exploring is to use math but pretty simple math, not very complicated one, to other domains. And I said before that he thought math was very natural to us, very immediate to us, but also he thought that math gives us certainty that cannot be found in other domains, and he wanted to let that certainty, permeate, maybe
Permeates.
other disciplines.
Yeah.
So one example of that is what we're doing in the session we have on Bacon and error, and there's some of us talk about errors in perspectiva, where he uses a lot of mathematics in the form of geometry in order to prove how certain visual errors can be, how they appear, and how we can get how we can explain them away. So that would be one application of how mathematics enters into adjacent fields such as perception, for example, and how it can be used
Yes,
as a tool for.
I was going to ask you that if it is just a proposal, or if he is effective trying to apply it,
If you look at the perspective, I think he's one of the first to have used as many images and examples from geometry, where he's proving his theory of vision and errors that can appear in perception. So I think he is actually employing the method of mathematics, at least at this level.
Okay.
I can add that in optics, it's not very novel to use diagrams, to use geometry. But he used geometry actually also in problems of natural philosophy, of motion, and in metaphysics. Not geometry, but math. Yeah.
Okay.
So he is employing it. Yeah, he's not just declaring. It doesn't remain on the level of declarations. He's not always successful in doing that, but he tries. He makes an effort.
Is there? This is a question of. I don't know enough to do this question, but is there some relation with the calculatores?
So that's a very interesting question.
Are you trying to address
No,
it?
we didn't look into it at all.
Okay.
But we found something really interesting. Nicola and I actually found something really interesting in Bacon's mathematical proofs against the unity of matter. And there, in one of those proofs, he writes about the magnitudes of essences. And I was very surprised to find that out. And I was thinking we should look to see if there's any influences to this idea later on, but that's in the future, not yet.
So now I want to change a little the focus. It will be a more institutional question. What were your struggles, your challenges to get this project financed? Because it would be a very good way to give advice to the more young ones that are seeing this video. If you can give some advice, what were your challenges?
So yeah, I can give some advice.
Okay.
It was actually, we were surprised how easy it was. Yeah, but I think one important thing was the Roger Bacon Research Society, because so we won an ISF grant, which is the Israeli Science Foundation, and what they do is they send your proposal to evaluators, right? And we had to recommend a few evaluators, and because we were part of a lot of events organized by the Roger Bacon Research Society, we knew a lot of people writing in the field. So we knew, we had a lot of people who knew us also. And because one of the things that the evaluator has to evaluate is how fit the researchers are for this project. So we had a lot of people who knew what we were doing already, and who could recommend to positively on this project. So I think that was one key advice I can give. I mean, be a part of a community, and
Yes, but
work together with other people.
But being part of the community has to do also with publishing and having some material that the community recognizes and acknowledge. So this is important to have as a backup or background actually to the application. So that first of all, to have a community that acknowledges your work, and then through their knowledge of your work, they could provide positive assessment of the application. So this is a procedure which I think should work. But you need, as Yael said, you need to have this circle of people who know your work and are positive about it.
Yes.
And also, if I can give another advice for young scholars, is to consult while you write, to show it to other people, to ask them what they think, to think of possible pitfalls, and to try to answer them in advance, to know where not to fall, what issues not to address in the proposal. Especially, some issues are very debatable, they're so try to avoid them. So otherwise, you can really get criticized for this and have lesser evaluations that are not as good as they could have been.
Yes.
If we're on this topic, I think it's not related to this project per se, but I think it's very important to take into account that failure will occur, and it's a normal process, and it doesn't mean that that is the measure of you as a person, because I think young researchers, but not only young researchers, take failure in a very in a weighty way. I don't know how to express this. Take it very badly, take it very personally, and it should not be taken as that. So everyone has failures, and I think that's an important part of making it in the field, being able to accept failure and move on.
And maybe one last advice.
Yes.
Submit research proposals.
If
if you don't do that, you'll never win. So.
Yes. Great advice. Thank you very much. One last question, more methodological. You're like in between disciplines. It is a little bit history of science, it is a little bit philosophy, it is a little bit history. So how can you manage to navigate in between these fields?
Maybe I can respond to that. This is why we are working as a group, and we acknowledge the contribution of members of the group, and we combine together the various perspectives, and then being productive by putting together all these aspects. So, and of course consulting other people when issues, professional aspects that require professional attention, then don't hesitate to inquire and ask questions about specific technical issues. And
For
so
instance,
you have to bring together all these elements in order to combine a coherent picture of that or other aspects of Bacon's philosophy.
For instance, do you feel the need to contact mathematicians?
Maybe, but that may be the
We
case.
will probably,
Yeah.
Not mathematicians, but historians of mathematics.
Historians of mathematics.
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
I have to say that for me, I don't see the problem, because I think in philosophy, especially medieval, there's no real gap between philosophy and science. I mean, we do those those divisions looking back at them, but I'm not sure that for them these divisions were so clear. So, and again, there are all those analytical philosophers who disrespect the history of philosophy. That was an understatement. But I often, in where I work, I have to defend myself. They accuse me of not doing philosophy. They say what you do is not philosophy. They are trying to sterilize. In my view, what they do is they sterilize ideas. They are taking them out of their context and treating them as if they're out of time. And I think it's always a mistake to do that. They talk a lot about intuitions. But intuitions change over time. My intuitions are not the same as a medieval person, right? So, I for me, what we do is very natural, and I don't sense any conflict or problem in this respect. My environment may may send some problems, but from I don't.
Yeah, I had the same idea. I think we're actually fortunate to work in the field of medieval philosophy, because for medievals, they didn't have all of these divisions that nowadays we're confronted with, and so maybe dialogue, it's easier among us. So I think that, yeah, unlike someone who's doing contemporary philosophy, there it would be harder to establish a dialogue, a community, to get them all together. But in our case, I think the material is somehow there, available.
And finally, one very quick last question. Imagine that like a politician or something comes to you and says, why should the state fund this project? Why is it useful for society? What does Roger Bacon has to do with us? What would you respond to them?
What does history do for us in general?
Yes.
This is a part of the project of us human beings understanding ourselves, understanding our concepts, understanding our way of thought, understanding how our understanding of the world develops. Again, we cannot isolate ideas from their context, and all of our ideas are grounded in some context, and this is us exploring ourselves, the way our mind works, the way our concepts develop. So I think it's part of us understanding who we are. The first thing that was written, like above the oracle, know yourself, right? This is it. This is what we do.
So this is a question that can be asked about history in general.
In general, of course.
And,
Yes.
and of course the answer is that know yourself. And so we are providing an aspect of that issue. How have we come to be what we are now?
Yes.
So other sciences are doing the same, like archaeology, and also psychology is like self-exploration. So I mean, if you ask this about history of philosophy, you can ask this about almost any other discipline in social sciences and in humanities.
Yeah. So thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much for your advices to our young listeners, and I hope that this project goes well. I'm really sure it will, and it was a pleasure to interview you.
It's a pleasure for us too.
Thank you.
Bye.